Welcome, everyone. It is Wednesday, and welcome to the Maryland Republican Party's Direct Line Show. We are honored to have our honored guest tonight, Berney Flowers, candidate for United States Congress in Maryland 2. Welcome, Berney. And our hosts tonight are Mark Unkefer, Nicole Bennett, and last but never the least, Jackie Saxton. We've upped our game. We've got three co-hosts now. Take it away, guys.
Executive producer Dwight Patel.
Well, yeah, we should probably acknowledge the fact that it really is exciting. We've been doing this show now for 2 years with the Montgomery County Republican Club, and virtually we really need to have a pretty darn good excuse if we don't do a show on a Wednesday, like a dinner somewhere or something like that. But we've been doing this. The Montgomery County Republican Club's been doing this for 2 years, and we've, thanks to our guests, really, we've now had the state Republican Party has sort of picked this up and is promoting this as well. So we're thankful for that. We're grateful for that. And so I'm great to have with me also my fellow officer, Nicole Bennett, who's been a regular host for this show. Nicole, why don't I turn to you to kind of introduce Berney?
Thank you so much. Listen, I love this show. I am one of those type of women that if you give me a microphone, I've got plenty to say, right?
And in fairness, you have a lot to say. You really do contribute a lot. Thank you.
But she is pretty smart.
Yes.
Why, thank you. Say it again so Tori can hear you, right?
Tori knows.
So I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to my new friend, Berney Flowers. He's a candidate for Congress here in Maryland, too. He has a storied military history. He's a stand-up guy. I had the privilege of sharing some pizza with him at California Kitchen Pizza Kitchen, whatever that thing is. And I was taken aback by how his calm, steady presence spoke more than his words. This is the kind of leadership that we need. California Pizza Kitchen. Thank you, Dwight. But this is the kind of leadership that we need here in Maryland. When we think about where we are as a nation and how everyone is running to the fringes and there are very few people in the middle, we need Ronald Reagan-like leadership. We need leadership you can look up to, and Berney Flowers is that man. Welcome to the show, Berney.
Wow. Nicole, how can I follow that?
Nicer intro.
I want him to invite me back, right?
I thank you so much. We got a lot of mutual friends, and I'm thankful for you guys hosting me and getting my name out here among the Republican Party. I've been hidden behind the DOD fence for a very, very long time. As a matter of fact, I retired from DOD on the 14th of January, and that's probably why you haven't heard my name. Due to the Hatch Act, I can't run for any office and be a candidate and, work for DOD. So I made a hard decision that was necessary to do this because our country's in trouble right now. And
Agreed.
With my background, I really believe that I can help.
So what was that pivotal moment for you where you said, you know what, like I'm going to leave behind, DOD is a fantastic place to work, right? A lot of job security there, and say, I'm going to put on the line. I'm going to run for office. And in Maryland of all places, and we know, you took a gamble and it paid off, certainly today of all days, that the maps are in your favor. You're in a competitive district now. So what was that moment that said, I'm going to take that risk?
Well, it was a group of moments, but I worked for DOD at DHS as what they call a liaison officer. My job was to help DHS get the resources they needed from DOD. And if you notice, we had the Haitian crisis, 15,000 people under a bridge, more people coming up this way. There's 3,000 people coming across the border every night. And the Ukrainian, Ukraine happened. But the big thing for me was the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I spent time in Afghanistan. I was in a bunker across the street from that airport for a few months. And what I saw with our withdrawal from Afghanistan was terrible. Our country is the greatest military power that has ever existed on this planet, and we had plans for how to retrograde out of that country. And those plans were just scrapped. We left military equipment over there that we will see again, but we'll be on the bad end of it. We're putting our people at risk. We're putting our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines and coasties at risk by leaving that equipment over there. And as a almost 21-year veteran of the United States military, having been there in Iraq and even in Ukraine, it was too much for me to bear. And that's when I said, I've got to do something. And that was August of this past year. And again, with the day-to-day dealing with the Afghans coming from there, with the day-to-day dealing with the Customs and Border Patrol being literally neutered of their jobs. They're not allowed to do their work. I have no problem with the people at DHS. Some of my best friends work there. They're outstanding people trying to do their job. But for some reason, the Biden administration has just decided that they're not interested in the American people. And I took a pledge, an oath in 1987 that I would defend this country against everybody till death do you part. And I mean it. At 56 years old, I still mean it. So I talked to my inner circle, my wife, my children. They all think I'm crazy, but I did it anyway. And so,
That's wonderful. That's a wonderful story.
And you know what? You brought up a good point by talking about that inner circle. And one of our other frequent guests on the show, Kendall Ehrlich, always says that when you're running for office, it's not just you, your whole family is running, right? They're all going to be thrust into that spotlight. So it's good to, they might think you're crazy, but I think everyone who decides to run for public office is just a little bit crazy. But it sounds like you do have their support, which is incredibly important.
It wasn't
crazy.
easy to get.
I'm about to say crazy like a fox, right? It took some finagling to get everybody on board. It's difficult nowadays with politics because of the lack of civility. There are so many things that we could do so much better. One of the things that I think is really easy, if we're looking for something easy on that list of being better people, is being better Americans. Teaching children that we can disagree about, let's say, roads and taxes and schools and that kind of thing. But ultimately, when all of that falls to the wayside, we are Americans. We're one family. And nothing should be more important than protecting and defending and ensuring the future of this family.
Agreed.
I have had some really, tearful moments over the last quarter of looking at what America has become and how children view our country.
Yes.
So if you're elected, when you're elected, can we count on you to make sure that Americana comes back in a big way?
That's one of the issues that I'm glad that you brought up. If we don't set a good example for our children and the next generation, they're going to wild out and we won't have America. We got to set an example. We've got to do the right thing, say the right thing. My good friend, Eurypsy Morgan, we've talked. 2 days ago, we were literally going to be running against each other, and we agreed to be civil towards one another. And she's been very cool. We've talked on the phone, and we made the best candidate win. Now she's moved over to the District 3, which makes me very happy. But bottom line is, but we've got to set a good example for our children. If we don't, we teach them bad things, and they will act out. And if you look at Baltimore, for example, there's almost a murder every day in that area. And that's going to, the northern part will be in my new area. And, that's part of my issue. And if we want people to act better, we got to do better. We got to set an example. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to bring to the table. I mean, I've had a military background. I've been beaten across the head to act like a gentleman. And Nicole, I know that if I don't act like a gentleman, you will give me a phone call.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So expect me to act like a gentleman.
That's a great answer.
And I'll add, speaking of, I'm still learning the new maps myself, that Baltimore is part of it. And I know, Nicole, we've had this conversation before that some of the reasons that we're not getting people elected in Baltimore is because people are, for some reason, they're too afraid to just go and knock on doors there and just talk to people. Because at the end of the day, yes, there's crime there, but there's crime everywhere. But there's still people, there's still voters, they still have concerns. So that's my parting wisdom to use, right? It's like, knock and talk to these people.
Listen,
Well,
I'll be there April 16th talking to
right.
people.
There
So
you go.
getting ahead of it and making sure that people see other people. I think the whole COVID pandemic set the world back, but it
Yes.
especially set our children back. Um,
Agreed.
we need to get America back again. We need to get parents working, kids back in school, back in athletics. You know,
Get rid of this fear.
absolutely. We cannot live as a nation afraid. We've never been fearful before, and we've lived through some harrowing times. When you think, usually, and this is a really horrible thing to say, so know my heart, right? But if there's a horrible act against the United States, a bombing, some sort of terrorist act, um, that's when you see all the flags come out, and everybody's kind of like, we're going to win this, we're all in this together, roll America, that kind of thing. I don't even know if something happened now that the entire country would get behind that. And
It's
that's scary.
interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned that because there, I guess, has been polling data about, particularly after Ukraine, the Ukraine invasion by Russia, about would Americans be willing to defend their country. And what was surprising were the number of people who said, no, not really. That's not, not my fight or something like that. And that's distressing. And I guess that's part of the pushback to this notion of American exceptionalism, that America is sort of a unique place that's sort of worthy of that protection. It is distressing. And I think that's one of the things, Berney, you can really bring to the race is that, personal history, that legacy, personal legacy of having been sacrificed and putting things on the line. But let me talk to you about, we've talked in general sense, but as you talk to voters, what are the issues that you're hearing people concerned about these days?
Education and crime. That's the big deal. And as I was in Baltimore this past Saturday. Dan Cox had an event literally going into the Harlem Theater, which is right in the hood, literally West Baltimore. And I drove around there for about an hour before the event started. And if you're familiar with the TV show The Wire, that's a very accurate description. I saw open air drug dealing on the corner. I was kind of appalled because a friend of mine who was born and raised there, Chris Anderson, you guys know Chris.
Yeah, we know Chris.
The issue today, yeah, Chris, we were driving around the area. He was giving me a tour, and we saw kids throwing a football on the sidewalk. And there was a park not more than 100 yards away. And then we drove down a little ways, and there was another park that was literally empty. And I'm asking Chris, why are these kids not throwing this football in this empty park on a 65-degree day? And he said, the drug dealers have taken it over. If they go over to that park, chances are that they'll be shot. And by a stray bullet. We live in America, and no American should have to live like that. No American should have to be afraid. And if I have to do something about it, well, I'm willing to do whatever needs to be done. We've got to do better. We've got to bring civility back to our country. And as far as organization and what's important to me, education. If we educate these folks, and let me take that back. There's a lot of corruption in our state right now. There's plenty of money. Money is flowing down. But if I had my way, I would audit the education department and in the greater Baltimore area. I don't mean just bringing in people that are local. I'm talking about bringing in Ernst & Young and one of the big firms that has no dog in the fight. Let's see where this money went. Let's see why is it that the majority of mayors who have led Baltimore recently over the past 15 years have all resigned in disgrace or left with controversy. The people deserve better. The people deserve better, and I believe that we can bring them better. But again, this deal is, we've got a red wave coming. As Republicans, we owe it to the country. We owe it to our area to do our best and get out there and get some election judges out in the local area so there won't be any corruption. when this happened last time in 2020, there was a big election and it didn't turn out the way we wanted it. Oh, I said 2020. Didn't turn out the way we wanted it. But I can tell you for a fact, we took it for granted that we were going to win. We didn't get ourselves locally involved. And, last night I was with the Patriot Club of Baltimore County up there in the Towson area. Those people are fired up. And what they're doing, and specifically the Republican women of Baltimore, is encouraging people to become election judges. So 3 cheers to them. I'm all about those guys. And if we get together as a group and work this red wave from the bottom to the top, we can make this whole region better. And I'm all for that.
Listen, I love
speaking Nicole's language with election judges, right?
Yeah. So Berney, that you don't know this, but those are my ladies there in Baltimore County.
Great.
I have a program called the 300. And my goal was to travel across the state to recruit 300 election judges that would work outside of their area in Democrat strongholds. I've got people from Garrett County all the way down to Worcester who are, in the wings waiting to drop the bomb. But can I tell you, I think our fight is going to be not so much because, now they know we're looking, not so much at the ballot box per se, but the fight is going to be out front. I think there's going to be, with especially here in Maryland, with MD Dems pushing to get that abortion referendum, on the ballot, it was going to be absolute slaughter for them. People had no reason to turn out to vote. I mean, they're just, they're paying the same gas prices we're paying. Their food is more expensive, like everyone else's food is more expensive. People are really hurting, and hurt people stay home. But putting that abortion referendum on the ballot guarantees that people are going to show up. So this is our time to shine. And, there are very few things I like more than a good election. There's like 2 other things. It's like election and 2 other things above that. But I really do like when, people get to really voice their opinion with their vote. And I think that's really powerful. And people, especially in Baltimore City, I have some brothers there, Chris being one, Eugene Boykai being another. When I talk to them about what's going on in the city, they tell me over and over again, the city has to fix the city. We're open to outside ideas, don't get them wrong, but the city has to fix the city.
The city has to want to fix the city. And to tell you the truth, I please don't take this the wrong way. But as a Black man, I can have a little bit more influence there than a lot of people. Yes, Saturday when I was walking through that Harlem theater in Baltimore, they looked at me like I was a unicorn when I was speaking. A Black Republican here? They were surprised to see Dan, but they were really surprised to see me. And so it was a nice event, and I have no problem going down there. I made a lot of friends. I know people there as well, the same people that you know. But we've got to get the folks to understand if you keep voting for the same ideology, you're going to get the same result.
It's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing, expecting a different result. But I want to talk a little bit, Congress's attention has been pulled in a couple of different directions lately. I was listening a little bit on an Uber ride today to NPR. I think it was, or no, it's C-SPAN until he changed it. A pivotal moment. I was really annoyed. I think it was listening to soccer or something. But they were talking about, I think Congress was interviewing a bunch of energy tycoons, right? Like ExxonMobil and, all the big companies. And they were talking about pretty much how they want to handle the energy crisis, right? You have the Republicans, of course, saying we need to drill. We have the ability to be energy independent, but we're being stifled. And then, of course, you have the Democrats. There's a Democrat from New York saying, no. The answer is green energy. We just need to build a bunch of solar panels and we'll be fine, right? So if you were sitting in on those hearings right now, how would you approach this crisis? And obviously, there's only so much Congress can do without Biden finally stepping up and what we know is the right thing. But how would you try and get something solved so that Americans stop hurting at the gas pump right now?
I don't understand Mr. Biden's policy. That's why I left the government. One of the many, many reasons. This country is sitting on 500 years worth of oil, 500 years worth of gas. We have production facilities, and we can actually manufacture this oil and gas for the American people without being environmentally reckless. I actually have solar panels on my house, but here's the problem with solar. When it gets cloudy, it doesn't work so well. And everybody can't afford it. It's a pretty expensive proposition. And those solar panels actually come from China. So that's another problem. We got a whole lot of things that the Biden administration seems to be doing wrong. And if I get into Congress, I'm going to do everything I can to block them at every turn. But the bottom line is we've got to look at a mix of energy solutions, not only oil and gas, not only wind and solar, but have you guys ever heard of thorium?
Is that like a Marvel thing?
No. Thorium is a very plentiful mineral here in the world, and we have lots of it. You're probably standing right on it. And when the United States military developed the nuclear power, here's the thing. They chose uranium-233 versus thorium. Thorium, when it's used for nuclear power, the results of the spent rods can't be used for weapons. The reason that the United States chose uranium is because the spent rods could be made into
used for weapons.
If you build thorium plants, we could solve our energy problems within 10 years. And China is about to go online with their very first full thorium plant using American technology. India is right behind them. And our 40-year-old technology that we developed is not being used. We could revolutionize the energy industry, but we choose not to because for whatever reason, we're just not doing that. And if I had the opportunity, there are experts in colleges that are ready to do this. And I know some of these people. I developed, or better yet, discovered this on some of my tours and conferences while I was traveling for the United States government. And I went over to Tennessee Valley Authority and I'm like, why are we not using this? Because it's not profitable. That's why.
So let me ask you, picking up from that question, how do you feel about the Biden's effort with to do a new nuclear deal with Iran?
I'm not happy with hardly anything Mr. Biden does. The Iranians hate us. When I was in Iraq, they would have shot me on sight if they had gotten a chance. We are not blameless in the situation, but Mr. Biden is not making things any better by dealing or trying to make deals with people that we've already solved. And we had a nuclear deal with our previous president. I thought he did a pretty good job, don't you think?
I agree.
Yeah, yep. Mr. Biden seems to be working against our best interests. He needs
Ours
to be.
And Israel's. I mean, that's a sensitive topic to me, with Israel being one of our biggest allies. I'm a Jewish woman. Yes. So for me, it's protecting Israel is one of the biggest allies we have, and one of the few countries you're going to see over in the Middle East that has the same feelings towards freedom that we do.
During my time behind the fence at Fort Meade, we were, let's just say we have some very close ties with our good friends in Israel. And I'm sure that they are appalled by Mr. Biden's actions. And we need to help our friends. Those people are on an edge right there because they've been surrounded by enemies for a very long time, and they've done a good job taking care of themselves, but we have to help. They're a democracy. That's what we do, is help democracies. And Mr. Biden is disappointing me. See, I'm being a gentleman. I didn't say anything bad.
Yeah, well, following up on foreign policy, can you share your thoughts about how the U.S. should be handling the situation, the Russian invasion in the Ukraine?
I would be happy to. I was in the Ukraine in 2003, before it was cool. The Ukraine, they briefed us, okay, the place is run by the Russian mafia. Let's just get this, understand this. Don't go anywhere by yourself. Don't go anywhere without a teammate. I was the only black man in the whole country that I saw, and I was there for 6 months.
Wow.
So with that said, I got a unique understanding of the place. I had nothing against them, but here's the problem, and I think I might have mentioned it on another interview. Years ago, when there was a Cuban Missile Crisis, President Kennedy instituted a naval blockade around Cuba when the Russians wanted to put nuclear weapons into Cuba. That was something that we were not going to stand for. So here it is now. We have tacitly been able to put in weapons labs quietly in the Ukraine, right next to Russia. And although I think Putin is a terrible human being. We had no reason to put those weapons labs in that facility, in that area that was kind of like a neutral zone. It's like poking a bear, you know. And am I saying that Putin has a right to do anything? No, he's a terrible human being, and he should have never started this war. But Russia has nuclear weapons. We always have to take that into account. If those nuclear weapons get into the hands of the wrong people, like the Russian mafia, we've got bigger problems. I would rather deal with Putin any day than some of the people that I've been aware of in the Russian mafia, because they just don't care.
Right.
And remember, you're right next to Chechnya, you're right next to Soviet Georgia. Those people have been fighting for a very, very long time, and they are very tough. So keep that in mind when we talk about diplomacy. And I can tell you that NATO, again, we have to remember also that the Ukraine is not a NATO member. We're not obligated to go rushing to them to save them from anything. We wanted to develop the country, and there's a lot of money to be made there. It's the breadbasket of Europe. But those people, I feel bad for them, but am I ready to send my 27-year-old son over to fight for them? No, I'm not.
Yeah, but I don't. But Bernie, I don't think anybody's suggesting placing American troops there. So I think that's sort of something of a red herring to propose that. The issue really is the kind of support both in terms of economic sanctions and in terms of military material that we provide to
humanitarian support. Wonderful.
But what about military support? Military
I would not recommend that at all.
Other than equipment and weapons, you wouldn't support?
Here's the problem. Some of these weapon systems require training. You can't just take a MiG and send it over to the Ukraine. Even though I saw some when I was there, you have to maintain those things. And once you get into that logistics trail, now you got to start providing the bombs, bullets, and beams for those soldiers. So it gets to be really, really complicated. And the Russians will see it a different way. They'll see it as active support. And next thing you know, we got World War III on our hands. And to tell you the truth, one of the issues that Putin has is there's an opportunity for him to gain a warm water port on the eastern side of Ukraine, not on the western side. And those eastern folks are Russian speakers. And are we willing to give that up and divide the place up? I'm not president. I don't know. All I know is I don't want any American blood spilled over there. I don't want any missiles flying this way. They've got some stuff that we literally can't stop. I'll tell you right now. So we need to tread very, very lightly. And, here in the United States, we have gotten comfortable because we've got two oceans on the either side of us. And we think that we're immune. We are no longer immune.
So shifting back domestically for a minute, I saw on your website that spending is a huge issue for you. And I think it is for everybody at this point as we start to probably move into a recessionary period soon. But I saw that for who knows what reason, that Congress has come to a decision to spend another $1 trillion on COVID relief. Again, don't know why. But things like that and the unnecessary spending that we've been seeing under this administration, how would you in Congress approach situations like that to keep costs down for the American people and represent the constituents that you have in Maryland?
Well, I appreciate you asking that question. To me, these drug companies have made an exorbitant amount of money off of COVID. Some people think that maybe they invented it, but that's another story for another time. I don't want to be conspiratorial, but I will tell you that there are like-minded people in Congress. I won't mention their names, but the conservatives I just can't wait to get with them. And let's cut the spigot off. Congress controls the purse strings of this country. And lately, they have not been doing a good job of it with the Democrats in charge. And I am very, very fiscally conservative. I think I would be so as a candidate. I'm a fiscally conservative human being. So my intention is to gather up all the Republicans, all the conservative Democrats, all the people that have common sense, and tell the president that we're not paying for this anymore. And you can take your defense industry, you can take your pharmaceutical industry, you can take all these people and just tell them the spigot is closed. So that's how I would deal with it. And you would probably hear a lot from this. If I got to be a freshman congressman, you'd probably see me a lot being the grumpy old guy who's telling Mr. Biden not to spend any more money.
I mean, it'll certainly will get easier after this election cycle when we take back,
Amen.
control
Amen.
of the House and the Senate. If you're asking me, I'm an optimistic person.
I am too. That's why we're doing this.
For sure. So I have a really good friend, Burgess Owens, who is the congressman.
Way to just name drop my good friend Burgess Owens.
My good friend Burgess.
I'm impressed. It's all good.
Listen, when you work as hard for the party as I do, you get to meet some folks, right? So Burgess Owens, actually, I met him maybe 4 years ago, 3-4 years, even before he was in Congress. My dear friend Bill Dotson was running for state Senate. And another dear friend, Norris Haynes, name drop. Norris played for the Denver Broncos.
I remember all those guys.
So Norris is an executive here in Charles County at the Central Committee, helped bring Burgess to Charles County. And, I got to wear the Raiders ring, although I'm a Steeler fan. It's still, it takes your breath away, right? It's a breathtaking thing. But he talks a lot, especially in his books, he talks a lot about the Black family unit and where we were and where we are now and how we get back to that. So we have, some really heavy hitters really putting some really deep thought into this. But when you think about the problem that Black America is having, it's actually mirrored across every single community in the United States. And I want to kind of pick your brain about that whole thing. I know what Burgess says the answer is. I just want to see if you kind of match with him. He thinks that when people start losing their faith in God, when they don't see anything bigger or higher or more powerful than themselves, their behavior changes. And then you see a lot of lawlessness. And I think he may have a very good point there.
He does have a very good point. And I'm a child of the Creator. We all are. Mm-hmm. And we need to respect those 10 commandments. And it doesn't matter what your race or religion is. I mean, the issue of the day is pretty much every religion in the world pretty much says the same thing. Treat your fellow human being like you treat yourself. And back to the Black family. Not having fathers in the Black family is a problem. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan. Mm-hmm. But he wrote a book, or better yet, a paper years ago, and I still have it on my computer. It was back in 1964 when Lyndon Baines Johnson was about to start the Great Society program, and people were trying to stop him. The Great Society program was the worst thing that ever hit poor people. It basically separated the Black family from their fathers. And now you got 2 generations, 3 generations of kids that don't have fathers around growing up because the government literally separated the Black family from its leader. Now we're dealing with the aftermath of that. You've got boys that don't understand the concept of controlling their emotions. They're emotional. They're ready to fight at any given time, ready to shoot somebody. And all that could be solved with having a male role model in the home. I really, truly believe that. I've been married 34 years and I've got 2 successful kids that I like to brag about, but I won't do that here. But the issue of the day is nationally, we've got to get back to traditional values. That's what we need to do. Does it always come from church? Well, everybody's got some sort of higher thought process, and people just need to be aware of what they're doing to their fellow community when they're out here drugging, thugging, and doing crime. we've got to get our churches involved. If you notice, when COVID started, the first thing they went after was the churches. You could go to the strip club, you could go to the liquor store, you could go to the football game, but you couldn't go to church. And to me, our government is literally working against us. So my thought is, let's get the government back involved in supporting our religious institutions, whatever they may be, as long as it's not Satanism or something crazy like that. As long as you're not harming someone, as long as you're doing good in the community, as long as you're faith-based, hey, let's partner with the government and start solving some of these societal problems. Because again, we've got a whole generation of kids that are walking around with masks and they're afraid. And we're going to have to deal with that.
I agree. I think this is a perfect opportunity for those of us who really want to have impactful discussions with the community, really talking about school choice, which is important here in Maryland.
Yes.
That there's huge school of thought that says, hey, the tax dollars should go with the student, at least to some
Yes.
degree, if it's 50-50 split, whatever that's going to be. But when you think about people, I have a dear friend, and his wife is amazing, and she homeschools their children. And he recently made a post that said, his wife is woefully underpaid. And, I fully support that. I know that how hard it is to educate a child at home. The amount of time, the energy, the thought process, the materials, all of that is a heavy lift. But then when you start to think about the spiritual implications, the emotional implications, I remember, God bless my daughter, she's a wonderful girl, but boy, when I had to stay home with her, the first maybe 3 years of her life, neither one of us were happy. I mean, it was just bad. It was just bad. It was really, really bad. I'm happy in the workplace. I like working. I like being with people. I love what I do for a living. I am a compliance nut. I love, believe it or not, making sure that medical practices understand government regulation and we can learn to thrive within that box.
Somebody's got to watch them.
Well, we've got a lot of people breathing on our necks. So, we are a heavily regulated industry, and kind of circling back to what you were talking about with COVID money, my practice gave COVID vaccines in the early days because of its location in Tacoma Park. It's a very transient community. People are in and out of the country all of the time. And COVID really walloped them, in a way that was, everyone said, well, don't be a jerk, don't kill grandma. Well, they weren't only killing grandma. I mean, they were wiping out whole families. Everybody had COVID. So it was really difficult to, as a medical provider, just not have any tools to help. So the government decided, I shouldn't say the government, the Biden administration decided that they were going to pay us for delivering these COVID vaccines. Well, the vaccine comes to us free as a gift from the United States taxpayer. But the administration of said vaccine, although they supply the needles, the alcohol, the Band-Aids, they pay us $40 per injection.
What?
So $40 for your first injection, $40 for your second, $40 for your third, $40 for the fourth one that's coming in August.
Wow.
So when you look at how COVID, is different than H1N1, H1N1, the government didn't get involved. It was strictly healthcare. We shut that thing down. It's what we do. Contentious election cycle, virus, it's a political football. And the people who got shut out were healthcare providers. Walmart had the vaccine before we did. CVS had it before we did. And they did horrible, horrible, horrible jobs of giving people medical advice, because they're not in the business of giving medical advice, but they are absolutely in the business of collecting that $40 per injection.
It was almost like the Biden administration was literally working against the American people.
It was a remarkable, and it still is remarkable, because they're talking about, like Jackie said, refunding that fund. So we're in a situation where, folks, we have to vote smart. We cannot, wish for the best and say, okay, I'm going to vote a split ticket, that kind of thing. Listen, vote a straight Republican ticket and do the world a favor. We are really, really in harm's way at this point. I mean, there are lots of.
Jackie mentioned earlier in our talk about us going into an economic slowdown. She hinted at that. Well, here's the thing. We owe $30 trillion. That's $91,000 for every human being, taxpayer, man, woman, and child in the United States. Once I pay off my mortgage, I will still owe $91,000. That's unacceptable in the greatest country in the world. And when the previous president was in place, we had a budget deficit, and we owed $22 trillion. Okay, that's a lot of money.
Mhm.
But Biden's been in office for 1 year, and now we're up to 30. We got 3 more years of this administration. We've got to stop this now. If we get another COVID variant to come in, we may go bankrupt.
And they're already plotting that one, right? Was it BA.2 or something like that?
Yeah, they're already planning. And we've just got to get a handle on this stuff. And as far as COVID's concerned, another thing that I noticed, that they didn't encourage people to get out and get sunlight and exercise
Yeah.
and vitamins and the things that keep people healthy. Because there's a lot of people that are young and healthy, like Jackie, that maybe you don't need the COVID vaccine. You know,
Yeah,
you don't
I
need
mean,
it.
I'm comfortable saying this because I've gotten the requisite number of shots to keep my job, but I didn't get the booster because I said I'm 24, almost 25 years old. I have no comorbidities. I don't see the point. I don't live with anybody who has comorbidities, and unless my couch can get COVID, but so
I don't know, Jax, that couch.
And in Europe, they're not even giving the vaccine to people under 35.
No, not anymore. And the scary part to me.
Let me come back, Berney. We've only got a few minutes. Can you just focus a little bit on how you're putting together your campaign and how people can get in touch with you?
Well, that's wonderful. BerneyFlowers.com is my website. Berney Flowers for Congress. You can find me on Facebook. I'm out pretty much every night. I'm going out to Montgomery County tomorrow night. I was out in Towson last night. We're just 2 events pretty much every day. I'm tired. I'm working harder now than I was when I was working.
That means you're doing it right.
You're doing it right. You're doing it right.
So Dutch Rupersberger, my proposed opponent, if I get through the primary, has $1 million war chest. But I got a whole lot of shoe leather. So I'm going to get out there and fight the good fight. I am funding a lot of this myself. If anybody wants to participate or contribute, please, please, please do. We want to do this the right way, and we want to beat them fair and square so there will be no complaints. And my opponent has been in office for 20 years, and what I see is our district getting worse. I see Baltimore. I see the crime going up. I was Scott Schellenberger, who happens to be a Democrat. I mean, I think the Attorney General for Baltimore County. I mean, he gave a speech last night, and he sounded like a Republican. I actually asked him, "Hey, it's about time to switch parties, don't you think?"
So you could do some
recruiting.
You could do some re-registration along the way. That would be a great.
That would be amazing.
With the registration forms too.
For sure. That would be absolutely amazing.
This is a wonderful time for us, and I'm willing to put in the effort, the time. I'm financially invested in this. I've got my wife's green light to do whatever needs to be done. Beth Lawson, I don't know if you know her. She's my treasurer. Hollis Albert is my campaign manager, and this guy is just fabulous. Hollis is actually at another event for us tonight. I had to be here with you guys, so he's off doing some other things on our behalf. But it's the little engine that could, if you know that story. We're going to fight the fight until we win. They're not going to like us, but I don't care. I'm trying to do what I can, do my part to save our country and to save the values that we have. And that's what I'm all about right now.
Well, wonderful. I think that's a wonderful note to wrap up on. And Berney, thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad that we got a chance to pick your brain and that everyone watching gets a chance to hear about who you are, especially, again, since the maps were redrawn. You got a race. You got, post-primary. That is a winnable seat, and this year of all years particularly. So
I need all the help we can get, and I'm representing, remember, I'm a Black Republican. I've been called every Uncle Tom, traitor, whatever in the book, and I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere.
All right. Well, Nicole, Mark, thank you guys for co-hosting with me and our little
Always.
Foursquare tonight. And everybody watching, thank you so much. We will be back next week with another guest. Have a
Thank you
great
guys
night.
for having us.